The wind hits at 3 in the morning and it finds everything. Your arms, your back, the bare skin behind your knees. You're wrapped in hide and you're still shaking because underneath that hide, there's almost nothing left to keep you warm. Then you touch your own jaw and it's warm. Thick, coarse hair growing exactly there, the one place on your entire freezing body that evolution apparently decided was worth insulating. That should bother you. Every other patch of hair on your ancestors got stripped away because keeping it would have killed them. So there has to be a reason this one stayed. And when scientists actually went looking for that reason, what they found had almost nothing to do with staying warm. Start with the loss, because the loss is what makes the survival strange. You're the only naked primate on Earth. Chimps, gorillas, every close relative you have, still wrapped head to toe in fur. You gave yours up. Biological anthropologist Nina Jablonski has spent decades studying why, and her research points to a simple, brutal mechanism. Your ancestors became endurance hunters, chasing prey for hours across open, blistering grassland until the animal collapsed from heat, not injury. That strategy only works if the hunter's own body can survive hours of exertion under direct sun, and thick fur is a serious liability there. It traps precisely the heat a working body is desperately trying to shed, so the trade got made. Fur out. Sweat glands way up, somewhere between 2 and 5 million of them packed into human skin, more than almost any other mammal alive relative to size. That bought your ancestors something specific. While every competing predator was forced into the shade during the hottest hours of the day, a hairless, heavily sweating hunter could keep moving, gaining access to hours of daylight that had essentially belonged to no one else. That explains the disappearance almost everywhere. It runs straight into trouble the moment you look at the jaw, a dense patch of hair sitting directly over a region packed with blood vessels close to the skin does nothing to cool anyone down. If anything, it works against the exact system the rest of the body just spent millions of years building. Whatever kept that patch in place, it was answering to a completely different set of rules than everything surrounding it. Here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. You are not less hairy than a chimpanzee. Follicle for follicle, human and chimp skin carry roughly the same density. What changed wasn't the count. It's what those follicles were told to grow. Across most of your body, thick pigmented terminal hair got quietly downgraded to nearly invisible vellus fuzz. Your face received a different instruction entirely. So when did this actually happen? Scientists turned to an unlikely witness, a parasite. In 2003, researchers Ralph Kittler, Manfred Kayser, and Mark Stoneking compared the DNA of human head lice against body lice, the kind that live specifically inside clothing and can't survive on bare skin. That genetic split marks, roughly, when clothing became a regular part of human life, somewhere around 72,000 years ago, with a 2011 follow-up by Toops and colleagues pushing the estimate closer to 170,000. Either way, the punchline holds. Humans needed clothes because they were already nearly naked. The nakedness came first. That tells you when we covered up. It doesn't tell you when the fur actually vanished. For that, researchers led by Alan Rogers at the University of Utah studied a completely different gene, MC1R, which controls skin pigmentation, reasoning that once fur stopped shielding skin from the sun, evolution would have urgently needed to darken it. Their 2004 estimate landed the pressure at roughly 1.2 million years ago. That's Homo erectus, over a million years before anyone resembling you existed at all. You didn't lose the fur. You were born into an already naked lineage. Which brings us back to the jaw, sitting there through all of it, refusing the memo everywhere else on your body had already received. The honest scientific answer starts with Darwin himself. Back in 1871, he noticed the beard didn't fit his own theory of natural selection at all. No clear survival benefit, yet remarkably consistent across human males. His conclusion was that something else was driving it: sexual selection, traits that persist because they influence who gets chosen, not because they help anyone survive longer. Modern research picked up where he left off, and the results are messier than you'd expect. Researcher Barnaby Dixson has run some of the most carefully controlled studies on this, showing people photos of the same men bearded and clean-shaven and asking them to rate dominance, age, and aggression. Across multiple studies, spanning genuinely different cultural populations, one result holds firm every single time. Bearded faces get rated as older, more dominant, more capable of holding their ground in a fight. Here's the detail that should stop you. In some of these studies, that dominance boost showed up with no corresponding rise in attractiveness at all. If the beard existed mainly to win over partners, you'd expect attractiveness ratings to move right alongside everything else. They frequently don't, which points the signal somewhere else entirely, less toward a potential mate, and more toward the man's standing across the fire from you, sizing you up before either of you says a word. Female preference data, when researchers went looking for it directly, turned out genuinely inconsistent, swinging by study, by culture, by which beard style got shown. Some studies found heavier beards outperforming everything else for long-term partnership judgments, while light stubble consistently won for short-term attraction, suggesting the preference isn't one signal at all, but two different questions getting asked, depending on what a person is actually evaluating a face for. One strange wrinkle deserves mention. Some studies found beards rated more attractive specifically when they were rare in the group being shown, and less attractive once nearly everyone had one. Evolutionary biologists call that frequency-dependent selection, and it's a tidy explanation for something you've probably noticed without naming it: why beard fashion swings in cycles roughly a generation apart. Then there's the theory that turns this from psychology into engineering. In 2020, researchers Ethan Besseris, David Carrier, and Stephen Nailway at the University of Utah built a composite material approximating human facial bone, wrapped sections in sheep fleece to simulate a beard, and dropped a fixed weight onto both covered and bare samples. The fleece-covered samples absorbed roughly 37% more energy and withstood about 16% more force before failure. Published in Integrative Organismal Biology, the study earned its authors an Ig Nobel Prize the following year, the award for research that makes you laugh, then makes you think. And it's worth being precise about what they actually proved. Not that beards evolved specifically for this reason, only that a real, measurable protective effect exists today under laboratory conditions, which is a smaller, more honest claim than internet summaries usually give it credit for. Here's the detail that actually settles the argument, though, and it's not a lab result at all. Beard growth isn't uniform across human populations, and it was never about climate the way you'd expect. A single gene variant, common across East Asia, rewrote a whole bundle of traits at once: thicker, straighter scalp hair, more sweat glands, distinctively shaped front teeth, and lighter facial hair, all riding on the same genetic package. That variant spread because carrying it was, in that context, an advantage. If a beard were a hard requirement for keeping a human face functional, you couldn't have an entire population doing perfectly well without one. You can't have optional armor. What you can have is a signal, one that shifts by population, precisely because the audience and the fashion shift too. Cultures noticed the same pattern the science eventually caught up to. Egyptian rulers, including female pharaohs like Hatshepsut, strapped on false ceremonial beards during official rites, detachable objects worn purely for what they communicated, proof by itself that the shape mattered more than the hair growing it. Mesopotamian kings invested serious resources oiling and braiding theirs into tight formal rows, a visible receipt for status nobody could fake cheaply, since faking that kind of grooming took real time and real access nobody without resources could match. None of that reads like decoration attached to a leftover patch of fur. It reads like a species that had already figured out, long before any lab existed, exactly what that patch of skin was for. So here's where a million years of hair loss actually lands you. Your ancestors traded a full coat for a cooling system efficient enough to outlast prey under an open sun, kept scalp hair to shield the one organ running the whole operation, and left one final, stubborn signal on the jaw: expensive to grow, impossible to fake, and still doing exactly the same job it always did, telling the room who you are before you've said a single word. You'll touch your own jaw again tomorrow morning, stubble or smooth, and decide, in about 2 seconds, without thinking about any of this, whether to keep editing a signal a million years in the making. If this changed how you look at your own reflection, that's genuinely the whole point of this channel, and there's more of exactly this waiting for you next time.